Is your sewing space covered in fabric piles? Do you struggle trying to find fabrics once they come home? Do you have containers of fabrics, but you're not quite sure what's in them? Well, if you're a sewist like me, you know how quickly fabrics can accumulate and become a challenge to keep organized. In today's video, I'll share some practical strategies and some tricks to help you maximize your fabric storage. And I have a couple of hacks to make it easier too. So stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Hi there, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please click that subscribe button. We love fabrics, and why not? Fabrics are our paint. They can inspire us, they can soothe us, and they can fill our bucket. But unfortunately, too much fabric can overwhelm us, affecting our creativity and feeding our anxiety. So this video is all about getting your fabrics organized, maximizing your space so you can see what you have. Note that I have already made a video on how to organize your fabric scraps, and I'll leave a link to that in the notes below. First, let's start with the capacity of your space. How many shelves, drawers, cupboards, and containers do you have available to hold your fabric? If you did the Declutter challenge last month, you might have created some new spaces as well. But it's important to recognize that our space is finite. There is only so much free space that we can fit our fabric into. And not all spaces are good for fabric. Good fabric storage means the fabric can easily be accessed. If you have to take more than 3 motions to see it, or you have it compacted so tightly that you can't get it out, you are less likely to use it, and you're very unlikely to put it away. Fabrics need to be visible. If your fabric is 2 or 3 layers deep or tucked in behind something, it will be out of sight and out of mind. And your fabrics need to be safe. You want them safe from humidity, sunlight, heat, and insects. And you may have a couple of additional concerns depending on where you live in the world and with whom. Next, you need to look at what you have. There are so many ways to categorize your stash, and it depends on how your brain works and how big your stash is. I think the most common way to sort your fabric is by color. Depending on your space, you could do it in 6 different color groups or 12. The second major way to sort your fabric is by size. Your layer cakes and jelly rolls need a different storage solution than your fat quarters and your yardage. You might choose to keep some fabric separate by designer or by collection, or you might subdivide certain themes like holiday or children's print. You might even niche down even farther into Halloween, Christmas, and Valentine's Day, or dinosaurs, animals, and vehicles. You might keep your manufacturers separate, like your Kona colors separate from your Andover Century solids. Maybe you sort by pattern type, solids and prints, or polka dots, stripes, hero prints, and blenders. You might keep different types of material other than quilting cotton, like double gauze, woven, denim, silk, minky, and more. You might also divide your fabric into their use. These fabrics are for tops, those are for backings, these are for binding. You might have some more valuable fabrics set aside, like Liberty prints, or collectible fabric, like early Heather Ross or Tula Pink. You might have some pre-wash fabrics that you want to keep separate from your unwashed. And I'm sure that there's other ways to categorize fabrics. If you can think of any, let me know down in the comments. Now, everyone is going to navigate this map differently. And as your stash grows and matures, you may change the way you categorize as well. So take a good look at your stash and see where you draw the lines. Personally, my first big divide is I separate my solids from my prints, but I don't bother sorting them by manufacturer. And I keep my prints all in a separate container based on color. Each box has one of these color sheets so I can recognize the tints, tones, and shades that go with each hue. And you can download a free set of these handouts on my website, and I'll leave that link in the video description below. I used to purchase a lot of fat quarter bundles, and I would keep that collection together until I figured out what I was going to do with it. And I have recently gone through all my fabrics and pulled out all of my stripes and put them in their own separate pile, because I like using them in my binding. I keep all my holiday fabric in one drawer, and I keep all my children's prints in this bucket here at the studio, as well as all my wide backs and bolts of fabric that I use for backing. And though for a long time all I purchased was fat quarters, since COVID I have accumulated a lot of half-yard cuts and yardage to deal with, not to mention the couple of layer cakes and jelly rolls that have snuck back in this year. So let's go back to that space that you've identified for fabric storage. Storage has a hierarchy. There's good, better, and best. And it goes back to that criteria from step number 1. Is it accessible? Is it visible? And is it safe? And we want to fit our fabric categories in the best location for what's best for us and how we use it. And additionally, we want to maximize that space. And that is using as much as possible of every square inch of the width, depth, and height of the shelf, drawer, cupboard, or container. So let me show you what I mean. This is an IKEA Billy bookcase that I have in my bedroom, which is about 20 feet from my sewing machine. The shelves are 9 inches deep by 13 inches high, which is the perfect size for yardage that has been folded around a comic book board. They fit almost perfectly on this shelf with very little space above or in front. So this is a great use of space. However, if I take the same size bolts and place them on this shelf in my sewing room, it is a poor use of space, as the shelves are twice as deep. Look at all this wasted space here in front. So this spot needs a different storage solution. Here I'm wanting to store some half-yard cuts, and I have finally committed to these containers. They provide good coverage of the shelf, 3 containers wide and 3 containers tall. Here is another example. This drawer works well for my fat quarters. I simply fold them in 3 and tuck them in, and I can easily see what I have. However, it does not work well for this 1-yard cut of fabric. If I tried to fold it into the same shape, the fabric is too thick, gets crumbled, and I can't close the drawer. So there's just not one type of solution that you need, but many. Sometimes you cannot maximize your space without a container. And before you invest in new ones, consider the following. Clear and stackable is best. Lids can be optional depending on your environment. The more you can see it, the more you can incorporate it into your projects. Avoid rounded shapes or tapered edges. So here are 3 separate containers. This is just a food container. Now the advantage of these ones is they have lids, this one does not, and of course this one's more expensive than this one as well. But because there's rounded edges on it, the capacity of this is going to be so much less. It's good as a project one, but not so good for storage. And this one is somewhat the same. You see, it's got, the lip is actually taking up a lot of space, and because it's on an angle inside, it's also going to have less capacity just because of that. Consider the cost. Since COVID, the price of some containers have doubled and even tripled. So before you invest in 25 of them, take them for a test drive and see how well they work for you. These ones are actually for the refrigerator, and I found my first ones back in 2019, and I've been adding to them 6 at a time. Now this is a dollar store bucket. You've seen it before. It was part of my dollar store series, and they just slip inside here really nicely. Now the trick is You want to make sure that this is still visible, so at a glance you can see it. And I like this because you can see in from the side. You can go even cheaper than that. You can use cardboard boxes because these fit in here just as well. Can your containers do double duty? Not only can this container hold fat quarters and half yards, they can also hold some mini bolts and some sewing patterns. Sometimes a new piece of furniture might work better. You saw how well my Billy bookcase held yardage. And this drawer set from IKEA can hold more fabric than 12 scrapbook boxes. But note, with drawers, sometimes it's really hard to see that fabric in the back. Containers can also be soft. These soft-sided cubes are great for storing yardage. Just turn them on their side to give the fabric a bit more visibility. But you can also make your own. I'm sure you have one of these soft-sided shopping bags around. Just mark, trim, and sew a box corner into the bag. You have a nice soft-sided container. And note that soft containers are also really good for temporary storage. When you're done, they can be folded up and put away. We are playing a game of balancing cost versus what fits versus what we have. But in general, it's always best to go with your space and you fit the container to the space and then you fit the fabric inside it. Because fabric is malleable. We can fold it all sorts of different ways. Your quilt store has fabric on bolts. The bolts give fabric the rigidity so that they can stand up. But it also gives a nice thick profile so that you not only see the color, you know the flavor of the print. And we want to recreate that in our storage. So you'll want to play with folding to give it a nice profile, which also fills the space as much as possible within the container. What will definitely help you finding that perfect fold is to measure the inside of the container. Then make a cardboard template the same size, or trace the shape with masking tape on your cutting board. Then use these as aids to practice with various folds to find the one that works for you. And no matter whether your shape is square or rectangle, this method can help you make long pieces and small pieces fit. So after much experimenting, I have found that my fat quarters fit these scrapbook containers best. Then these new containers, they fit a half yard to 1 yard cuts best. Then my mini bolts are 1 yard to 4 yards, and then the big bolts is anything more than 5 yards. Consistency in your folding will not only increase the capacity of your space, it will bring calm and order. Don't forget to label. Whether you're using bins, shelves, bags, cupboards, be sure to put out labels. Labels will help you quickly identify where certain fabrics are stored. Not only do we have the capacity of our sewing rooms to deal with, we also have our sable status to consider. Stash accumulated beyond life expectancy. Life is too short to hang on and manage fabrics that you will never ever use. So when you reach these capacities, it's time to declutter. Start by eliminating the faded, the damaged, and the musty. Then go back to that fabric chart. Is there a subcategory that you no longer want? I recently did this and decided that I no longer needed some old Tula pink. I also discovered old Amy Butler fabric too, and I decluttered those. I also took a hard look at my blacks and whites. They sneak in through those collection bundles I buy, but I very rarely use anything high in value or very, very low in value. I will keep a few, but honestly, they'll probably last me for years. A couple of years ago, I famously decluttered my BATIKS. Though I liked the color, I realized that I no longer like sewing with them, and I haven't missed them. And this year, I realized that I don't need to hang on to 1/4 yards and half yards of upholstery fabric. I don't do a lot of it, and when I do, it's project-based. It has taken me 4 years to make this video. I've been trying to find a perfect solution for storage, but now I realize that there's no perfect system. Not only is this about trial and error to find out what works for you, it's also about flexibility, because how you use fabric will most likely change over time. I have a couple more containers to fill, and then I am going to count how much fabric I have. So stay tuned. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope these tips help you create a happy, functional sewing space. And if you're looking on more information on how to organize your space, I'll leave a link to that playlist here. If you wanted that link to how to organize your scraps, I'll leave that link as well. Take care, and I'll see you next time.